In this video, I would like to introduce the two pseudo-legendary Pokemon for my Icelandic-inspired Fyrún Region. I chose to make two pseudos for the Fyrún Region as homage to the Hoenn region, which is the only region to have more than one, as the Fyrún Region and its themes of duality were heavily inspired by the Hoenn region. It's also inspired by Iceland, which is known as a land of fire and ice, which is why one will have the fire typing, while the other will have the ice typing. Inspired by frost giant Ymir and fire giant Surtur from Norse mythology, as it's heavily tied to Iceland through its poetic Edda and sagas. In fact, many of these creatures and stories originate in Iceland, which is something a lot of people don't know. Anyways, just like Hoenn, one of my pseudos is the dragon type, keeping up with the current status quo, while the other is not, to take a break from the norm, as I know a lot of people really want them to do this again in a future generation. So in other words, I decided to have my cake and eat it. I commissioned the incredibly talented artist Pokemon to bring both of these lines to life. Before we learn more about these two pseudo Pokemon, let's go back and look at their first two stages. Let's start with the Ice-type Jotundra line, being the Dragon-type representative of this dynamic duo. Starting with the adorable Hailmet, who I actually teased towards the end of my last Dragon-type focused video, which not only includes several other amazing Dragon-type lines, but takes a deeper dive into the story and some of the characters in the Fyrún region who use them. So make sure to check out that video if you haven't already. It's actually one of my favorite I've created so far, just because it is so story-focused. But anyways, back to Hailmet. Hailmet is once again an Ice Dragon type, with its name being a play on, you guessed it, Hail and Helmet, as it has what looks like an Ice-type helmet over its head, which is a fun feature and actually kind of a reference to hockey players, because it's Pokemon, so why not? And of course, while this is super subtle, I thought it would be a nice little design element for an Ice-type Pokemon. Their icy helmets protect their heads against the fiercest hailstorms, and also against crashes, as they love to race amongst each other down snowy slopes. Whether in the modern-day Fyrún region or the ancient Seydr region, Hailmet can only be found in the Fyrún region's large icy mountain, and I'll even get into why that is later on in the video. Hailmet evolves into Ymirime. They claim entire sections of Ice-Schult Mountain as their territory. Very few Pokemon dare challenge them, as their icy cold attacks often result in frostbite. Its name is a play on Ymir, the frost giant from Norse mythology this line is inspired by, and rime as in frost formed on cold objects, through the rapid freezing of water vapor or fog. While bigger and slightly tougher looking like most evolutions, Ymirime's design maintains Hailmet's cool colors and icy helmet, but now the helmet has extended on top of its head to create ice armor, further conveying that subtle hockey player element or vibe within the design. And now the moment you've been waiting for, Ymirime evolves into the first pseudo Ice Dragon type Jotundra. The king of Ice-Schult Mountain, their icy armor sparkles like the Boreal Aurora. With one blow from their powerful arms, they can freeze all the area around them. They are the sworn enemy of Magnarok. Its name Jotundra is a mix of Jotun, being a race of giants from Norse mythology, such as Ymir, usually at odds with the Ice or Pokemon aka Norse gods, as well as Tundra, which most of you know is a frozen Arctic area. Both of which are very fitting of this concept, as it is once again inspired by frost giant Ymir, which I feel really shines through within this final stage. Its dragon typing is obviously due to its more dragon-like features, as I wanted at least one of these pseudos to be a dragon type to keep up with the current status quo. But I know what a lot of you may be thinking, it has the same exact type combination as Paldea's new pseudo-legendary Baxcalibur. However, that's merely a coincidence. This Fakemon was made long before Scarlet and Violet were even announced, but given how much I love this Fakemon and the fact that type combination is really the only thing they have in common besides being pseudos, I didn't feel it was necessary to scrap or change it at all. I mean, it's not like Pseudo Pokemon haven't repeated type combinations before, and its concept and design are nothing like Baxcalibur's. In fact, I know I'm biased, but I actually like it much better. Anyways, those of you who watched my scrapped Pokemon video revealing some of the Pokemon I scrapped for the Fyrún region, as well as my reasoning behind these decisions, know that I already changed this Pokemon's name and design to better fit this new Frost Giant concept after coming up with its counterpart Surtur, as I wanted them to feel related. This design's original name was Auroragon, and while I love this old design, I think Jotundra's maintains a lot of the same elements and is a much better fit for the Fyrún region. It even still gives off some subtle hockey player vibes like the rest of the line, and the colorful sheen in its armor is yet another reference to the Northern Lights, as the line can be found on Dragon-type gym leader Fantasia's team. So I wanted to give it something to fit Fantasia's design and theme of beauty. Okay, next let's get into the Fire-type pseudo line, the first stage being Fire Dark type Kindlad. They splash around in magma pools and love rolling down from volcanoes, leaving scorch marks behind them. Its name stems from the term kindle, as in to set something on fire, and lad, as it's a friend-shaped little lad. I wanted it to be just as cute as its counterpart Hailmet, and clearly look related to it, yet have its own concept and personality. The reasoning behind its fire typing is fairly obvious. I mean, just look at that molten diaper, which by the way was created not only to reference the fact that it's a baby, but as a fun way to juxtapose Hailmet's icy helmet. As Hailmet's icy helmet is on the top of its head, as this molten diaper is on the bottom of Kindlad's body. I'll get more into the reasoning behind the dark typing when covering its evolutions, as it will be a little bit more clear, but to clear things up, as cute as it is, it's a little demon, literally. Just like Hailmet, it can be found in both the modern-day Fyrún region and the ancient Seydr region, but only in the region's large volcanic mountain on the opposite end of the Fyrún region. Kindlad evolves into Surtorch, who keeps the same red and black color combination and fire dark typing, but loses the egg shape and diaper in favor of something more menacing, as it now looks more like a dinosaur, particularly a Carnotaurus, with its devilish horns further fueling its fiendish concept and design. However, it maintains its molten armor, now extending over its head to parallel Ymirime's icy armor. Its name is also a direct reference to Ymirime's name, as it incorporates Fire Giant Surtur's name in the same manner Ymirime's did Frost Giant Ymir, with the latter of its name Torch being, well, it's a fire type. I think you probably figured that out. They wage turf wars on their peers to claim volcanic areas. They spew flames and then headbutt their confused prey. Their powerful skull usually finishes the job. And last, but certainly not least, we have Surtorch's evolution, Magnarok, the Fyrún region's second pseudo, rocking the hellish fire dark typing in honor of Norse fire giant and bringer of destruction Surtur. It's the king of Fireshalt Mountain's active volcano, with its molten hot armor emitting intense heat, rivaling that of its volcanic kingdom. They are the sworn enemy of Jotundra. Its name Magnarok should instantly invoke fear, as it is a play on magma and Ragnarok, the apocalyptic event in Norse mythology, brought on by none other than Surtur. The fire typing was obviously a must in order to make a Pokemon inspired by a fire giant, but since Surtur is normally depicted as a hellish fiend capable of ending the world, I felt the dark typing made perfect sense, and has already been used by a non-dragon pseudo before. I also wanted to stay true to Surtur's fiendish design as best as possible, but in a more family-friendly Pokemon-esque way, which is why it looks more like a dragon or dinosaur, also further referencing its connection to the Jotundra line, but once again giving it its own unique identity outside of that dynamic. And of course the magma armor really fits and plays up the whole Surtur concept as well. While there are plenty of differences between these two Pokemon, there's also quite a bit of similarities if you look close enough to make them feel like they are related. Their designs, at least their white and black coloring, were partly inspired by Yu-Gi-Oh! Monsters Blue Eyes White Dragon and Red Eyes Black Dragon, as I used them as slight references. I felt being white and black not only complemented their types and concepts, but the idea that they were opposite forces, two sides of the same coin, yin to the other's yang. And while most of their inspiration comes from the Norse Frost Giant and Flame Giant, I also didn't want them to just look like a generic giant Pokemon, or another depiction of these iconic characters from Norse mythology. Whenever covering some sort of creature or character from mythology or folklore, I always try to put my own creative twist on it. And this helps give them their own identities and lure within the context of my regions, and the Pokemon world at large. As I'm sure you already saw, these two Pokemon also have their own brand new signature ability and moves. The Jotundra line has the ability Celsius, increasing the chance of its Ice-type moves inflicting the Frostbite status, while the Magnarok line's ability Fahrenheit does the same thing for the Burn status. While I'm aware and disappointed they brought back the Frozen status in Scarlet and Violet, I went with the Pokemon Legends Frostbite status for the Fyrún region instead, as I always wanted the Frozen status to be nerfed, and more importantly, the Frostbite status is more on par with the Burn status, working in a similar manner. And given the region's themes of duality, with so many fire and ice types such as these two, I felt leveling the playing field between the two statuses was for the best, so one of these two lines didn't clearly overpower the other. Naturally, both of these final stages' signature attacks make the most of these abilities, Jotundra's being called Frozen Fury, and Magnarok's being called Infernal Fury. And these two Pokemon also each have a Forge Form weapon, both being inspired by weapons from Norse mythology. Jotundra's weapon is a Wrecker type in the form of a massive ice-covered club modeled after Frost Giant Ymir's signature weapon. whereas Magnarok's forge form, being a fiery sword of the slasher type, is modeled after Surtur's signature sword, often referred to as the Sword of Doom. As tempting as it was to make them both have a weapon of the same class and nature, I felt it was best to honor the weapons used by their inspirations, especially as it helps further the idea that while they're counterparts, and clearly related in a sense, that they are polar opposites. While the journey through the Fyrún Region would be open world, it is tiered into 3 groups, being the early game, the mid game, and the end game, with each tier having one gym leader that you have to defeat at that point in the story before moving on, due to how the region and their teams are structured. For example, you'd have to face Rock-type gym leader Julia in the first bracket, and Steel-type specialist Sigrun would have to be faced in the last bracket, whereas Dragon-type gym leader Fangtasia must be faced in the mid-tier, halfway through your journey, as that is when your pal Ragnar will reveal their true identity to you. Being as this battle takes place midway through the game, Fangtasia will also be using Ymirime at the time of this battle and not Jotundra, but Jotundra will be on their rematch team, and even become their Ace Forge form weapon for the rematch battle, as its Ice Club's beautiful refractions match Fangtasia's theme of beauty and dress in the same manner their previous Ace Drakion's Forge form weapon did. For those of you who remember Dark-type specialist and Elite Four member Isaac, he is tasked by your concerned mother, Professor Aspen, early on in your journey to help train you in how to properly wield a Forge form weapon in battle so that you're safe, as he is not only an expert Pokemon trainer, but skilled swordsman despite being blinded since birth. His cunning Dark-type Pokemon have always acted as his eyes, guiding him through the darkness, helping him to hone his senses. While training you how to wield a Forge form, his partner Pokemon Eyes and Ears' Dark-type Rascarade Sword is his weapon of choice. But when actually facing him at the end of your journey as a member of the Elite Four, he will be using his secret weapon and true ace, you guessed it, the Fire Dark-type Magnarok, as he will unleash a fury of destructive, fiery attacks using this flaming sword. So prepare for a heated battle between teacher and student, as things between the two of you didn't end on the best of terms since your last encounter, and there's a lot at stake if a member of either Team Brain or Bronze, such as yourself, were to become champion. Speaking of high stakes, in the second installment of the Fyrún Region's 2 conceptual DLCs, Champion Odin will put a bounty on a powerful legendary Pokemon that's mere presence threatens the Fyrún Region. Initially, Teams Brain, Team Brawn, and Team Beauty, introduced in the first DLC, will be at odds, each hoping to claim this bounty. But when push comes to shove, in order to prevent this Ragnarok-level event, the members of all 3 teams will finally put their differences aside and unite towards this common goal, learning that true power is achieved through balance, which will be the theme of the second DLC, as the theme of the first one is obviously beauty. This fearsome legendary Pokemon that you must defeat may look familiar. If so, that's because it is the true form of Jotundra and Magnarok. Its name being Frosfyre, a mix of frost and fire, and play on Crossfire, as it's a cross between these 2 pseudo Pokemon with an epic ice-fire typing, fitting of the Fyrún Region's themes, as well as Iceland's reputation as the land of fire and ice. It even has a signature move that is simultaneously a fire and ice move, working in the same way as Flying Press. Its body being split in 2 distinct sides, each resemble one of the pseudo's ice or magma armor, whereas its body's gray coloring is also a reference to both of their designs, as it's a compromise between their black and white bodies. But now it even features Abyssinian parts in its body as well, as Abyssinian is formed from the cooling of magma. Long ago, during the events of Pokemon Legends Realm Doll, when the Fyrún Region was first being settled by the Voyage Clan and known as the Seydr region, this powerful Pokemon threatened the region as it does today. After defeating the initial story of Pokemon Legends Realm Doll, legendary Pokemon Realm Doll, guardian of the Seydr region and gatekeeper to the 9 realms with its reality-bending powers, signals of Frosfyre's arrival, just as its Norse inspiration Helmdall's Horn did Ragnarok in Norse mythology. However, trying to stop Frosfyre after finally arriving in the Seydr region, Realm Doll suffered a devastating defeat, as the region's last line of defense was the divine Pokemon Edlodin, king of wisdom, war, and wonder. However, omniscient Edlodin always knew this day would come, so using its powers of sorcery, it created the Forge Form phenomenon as a means to find a warrior worthy of wielding its powers and fighting alongside it in battle to defeat adversaries such as this, as it foresaw the limitless potential between Pokemon and people the moment the Voyage Clan set foot in the Seydr region. And while some of them abuse this power and seek to use it for their own gain, merely seeing Pokemon as weapons and tools to be used, after having those like you prove that Pokemon and people could one day live in harmony, and the bond between the two could create a weapon like no other. So after having proved yourself worthy, Edloading grants you its power in exchange for your own, transforming itself into a magical spear inspired by Odin's weapon in Norse mythology, so that together you are able to take on this behemoth of a Pokemon and save the Seydr region from being destroyed. This would be the final secret boss in Pokemon Legends Realmdale, and after successfully weakening it, Edloading combines its powers with 3 magical Pokemon to split Frosfyre's dual natures and imprison them in the massive mountains of the Fyrún region, each capable of housing such elements. As a result, the Jotundra and Magnarok lines were born and can only be found in their respective mountains even to this day. This is why these 2 lines are always at odds and have since become mortal enemies, as the very existence of the other infuriates them, as it's subconsciously a reminder of the fact that something is missing and that they are incomplete. And while both pseudo-legendaries are still powerful in their own right, they are literally pseudo-legendaries unable to reach their full potential. That is, until someone with a dark heart seeks to unite these 2 conflicting forces, knowing the danger it presents. What good could come from this? You'll find out, as there's plenty more to come on Frosfyre and these 2 DLC projects in the future, as I hope to fully explore these concepts after wrapping up the initial Fyrún series here on this channel, each with their own massive feature-length video, as I'll not only cover the story and events of each of these DLCs, but introduce exciting new locations, characters, forge forms, and of course a bunch of brand new Pokemon for each as well, including a lot of these legendaries I've been teasing. So please stay tuned for that, as it will be one wild ride. But first, we have plenty more of the Fyrún region to explore, including all of the characters and plenty other legendary Pokemon. So if you like these Fakemon and enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a comment down below to let me know which of these 2 pseudo lines is your favorite, or if either of them will have a place on your team in the Fyrún region. Like I said, let me know down below. And if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to hit that like button, as well as to subscribe to my channel for even more Fakemon content, as I have several exciting projects in the works. Also, please make sure to go follow and support all of the amazing artists who I commissioned to bring my ideas to life for this video, such as Fetty Rex, who did this new amazing avatar for me, which I know a lot of you love. I myself really enjoy, as it makes editing things a lot easier for me. As well as the tremendously talented artist Fakemans, who did the beautiful scenic artworks for this video, bringing even more personality to all of these Pokemon. And one of my favorite artists, Trainer Matt, who not only did all of the characters featured in this video, but all of the forge form weapons as well. And of course, the star of the show, the incredible artist and my good friend, Pokémon, the artist behind both of these pseudo lines, as well as the previous pseudo line for my last Fakemon region, the Luika region. I actually always use Pokéj for my ice type Pokemon, or at least most of them, as he just does really good on the ice effect and the crisp whites. But he's also really good with the fire effects, which is why I thought he'd be the perfect artist for both of these lines, and as I'm sure you could see, he really killed it. So thank you so much, Pokémon. I couldn't be more grateful and happy with how these turned out.